Seniors Australia. And I want to bring in our political panel for today, Paul Fletcher for the government and Anna Burke for the opposition. Thank you both very much for joining us. Paul Fletcher, I'll come to you in a moment. I just want to play one more bit of Scott Morrison's interview with Kieran Gilbert this morning when he was raising some questions about the family home and the asset test. Here's what he said.
There are genuine issues, though, about when people actually want to sell the family home. Now, currently, if you want to sell the family home and you want to be able to access more of your capital to improve the quality of life as you grow older, well, you get heavily penalised for doing that under the system. And that's an issue that's been raised with us as well. And that's something worth discussing as part of the debate.
And he made this point several times. Paul Fletcher, is it a bit rich, though, seeing as Labor's last budget actually put in a measure that was aimed at addressing exactly this problem, and that measure was torn up in the Coalition's first budget last year?
Well, good afternoon, David. And look, a couple of things. Firstly, this issue about people wanting to transition out of houses which are now too big for them and realise the proceeds in an efficient way to assist them in the next stage of life. It might be going to a smaller house or apartment, it might be moving into a retirement village. This is an issue that's regularly raised with me, and I'm sure it's raised with all of my colleagues by their constituents, so it is a real issue. Now, this point that Labor has sought to argue today, that they proposed a similar measure in the last budget, I think they're missing a key point. Jenny Macklin rushed out with a media release this morning, and she was arguing that Labor's measure last year would have done what Scott was talking about. In fact, the Labor measure would have involved allowing people to sell their home and then set aside up to $200,000 in an account, but they couldn't touch it, and it would have effectively operated as an increased assets test for the pension. What Scott is talking about is something very different. It's about how do you let people make better use of their own assets? How do you let people provide for themselves where they have the capacity and appetite to do so? So it's actually a pretty fundamental distinction between a Liberal approach and a Labor approach. Jenny Macklin's approach is about, government has to solve everything. Scott's approach, the Liberal approach, an approach I fully support, is how do we facilitate Australians going through a stage of life where they want to leave the large family home and realise the proceeds of that and deploy that in the way that best meets their needs? How can government facilitate that, and are there incentives or disincentives in the system that we need to look at? So that's the kind of consultation that Scott's been working through as the newly appointed Minister for Social Services, because the Liberal Party will always be about trying to help Australians give effect to their own personal choices.
Anna Burke, Scott Morrison today pretty clearly ruled out including the family home in the assets test, but Bill Shorten today was still pressing that issue, saying that the government was considering it. The Coalition says that Labor is just trying to scare pensioners. Is that justified?
Look, it's a very real issue and concern when people start talking including the family home and your asset test. There's a lot of pensioners in my neck of the woods who are asset rich and cash poor. They might be sitting in a wealthy home, but they can't downsize and sell and stay in the same area. It's too prohibitively expensive. We actually realise that, and Paul's got our plan wrong. We realise the need to assist people in that transition, and that was our budget measure. But we are very concerned about budget measures that are still impacting pensioners. Why don't we rule out a co-payment once and all for Medicare? Why don't we rule out many of the measures that would hurt pensioners? Why don't we start talking properly about indexation? I'm glad Scott Morrison's taken off the table including the family home, but then he fudged the message by saying, we still need to talk about it. As Paul has indicated, well, we spoke to people before the last election, took a plan that would assist people transition and downsize if they want to, if they choose to, and the government's rejected that.
What about, Paul Fletcher, superannuation concessions? That seems to be an area that economists constantly point to as where we could rein in some spending.
Sure, David,
in terms of the budget.
Yeah, let me just first come to Anna's claim that I've got Labor's plan wrong. I've got in front of me a statement, Budget 2013-14, supporting senior Australians, and it says, this account will be exempt from the pension income and assets test for up to 10 years or until a withdrawal is made from the account, whichever occurs first. In other words, once you start to draw on the money, then effectively you can no longer have the concessional treatment. So, and look, it was disappointing there to see Anna again trying to run the scare campaign. Let's be absolutely clear. Scott Morrison, the Minister, has been crystal clear this morning. There is no plan to include the family home in the assets test. Now, on the broader issue of do we as a nation face a set of policy issues and opportunities as the population ages? Well, there are terrific opportunities out of the fact that the population ages. For all of us, that's great news. For you, David, for Anna, for me, it's great news that we're all living longer, and our quality years of life, the research shows, are also going up. It's not a case of living longer but not having quality of life. So that's very good news, but we need to make sure that all of us are in a position to fund our longer lives. Now, that's why the government will be bringing out within coming weeks the intergenerational report, which will be a very thorough and comprehensive look at these issues so that we can get some of the data on the table and have a calm, fact-based discussion of what the issues are, rather than the sort of hysterical scare campaign we're seeing from a desperate opposition leader in Bill Shorten today.
We've got to go to a break in a moment, but can you outline any areas where Labor would work to address the sustainability issue in this space, aside from the one that you were talking about with the budget last year or the year before?
Well, we've got a big measure that we've already introduced that we put to the last budget that, again, the government has rejected. Labor is the architect of universal super. We're very proud of the fact that we looked towards the future way back in '87, and again, the Liberal opposition at the time bagged it then, but we realised the need to fund for a healthy retirement for all and to make that sustainable. So I think the government is needing to look in this space sensibly. We've actually got a really good measure there, as you've indicated. We would suggest that they implement that.
Okay, we've got to take a break, and we are, by the way, standing by to take you to a news conference with Mark Butler, the Shadow Climate Change Minister. We'll take you there once he pops up. For now, a quick break.
You are the king. Play Good Game Empire in app or browser at goodgame.com.au.
Going to the gym is easy. You can work out any part of your body, but they don't really have a machine for your brain. Lumosity is all these great exercises, all based on neuroscience, but they just feel like games. It's a fun workout, and my brain feels great.
Any brain can get better, and Lumosity.com can help. It's like a personal trainer for your brain, improving your performance with the science of neuroplasticity, but in a way that just feels like games. Start training with Lumosity.com right now and discover what your brain can do.
Red Rooster presents The Great Night In. Get 2 whole roast chickens for $20 and a 2-month free subscription to Quick Flicks Movies. The perfect ingredients for a great night in. Hurry, for a limited time only. Red Rooster, tender loving chicken.
I eat Risk for breakfast.
Tastes like bacon.
At Budget Direct, we don't insure Captain Risky. To keep prices low, get 25% off car insurance online. Quote now.
If you just want one, now's the time to just get one. With power deals available across the entire HSV Model Year 14 range. Like the legendary GTS, the Club Sport R8, or the Maloo R8. With up to 430 kilowatts of power, there's never been a better time to power into your local HSV dealer. But hurry, stock is strictly limited. HSV Power Deals. Just get one, get one.
Your financial goals are as unique as you are. That's why Colonial First State's range of super and investment options are designed to help you reach them. Because even though your journey may change along the way, you should never lose sight of where you're headed. Talk to your financial advisor about how Colonial First State Super and Investment Solutions can help you find your future.
Grapolis, bring prosperity to your people and lay the foundations with the help of the gods of a powerful empire. Plan your strategy, forge alliances, and fight in epic battles. Conquer island after island and become ruler of Grepolis. Play now for free at grepolis.tv or download the app.
On the next Switch Show, Stephen Conroy, Shadow Minister for Defence. He'll have a lot to say about the submarine contract, as will Andrew Davies. He's from the Australian Strategic Policy Institute. I want to know what sort of subs we really do need. I don't care about the process. On the next Switch Show.
You're watching Lunchtime Agenda. Thanks for your company. I'm still joined by Anna Burke and Paul Fletcher. I want to turn attention to the Bali 9 ringleaders. Signs continue to look worse and worse for them and their prospects at avoiding execution. Paul Fletcher, first to you. We can't give up hope yet, though, can we?
The government is certainly not giving up hope. The government, from the Prime Minister, Foreign Minister Julie Bishop, and at all levels of government, our ambassador in Indonesia, and all of the bilateral contacts we have with Indonesia, and of course we have many, we are continuing to work very hard on this. We are not giving up hope. The view of the Australian people, I think, is pretty clear that we don't think the death penalty is fair or appropriate. Obviously, if people break the law, then they need to expect a sanction, but we don't have the death penalty in Australia. The view of the Australian people, I think, is pretty clear on this, and so certainly the Australian government is not ceasing working on this. That being said, obviously the signs don't look good. The signs don't look good, but nevertheless we are absolutely not giving up.
Anna Burke, what's your take?
Oh, look, I think that the government's actually been, doing a very good job on this, and the opposition has been working in tandem with them to ensure that these young men's lives are spared. The death penalty doesn't resolve issues. It doesn't stop drug trafficking. It doesn't stop death. This has been proven time and time again. And having actually lost a constituent who was hung in Singapore several years ago, his death hasn't resolved the issue of drug trafficking in Singapore, and his mother still lives with that tragedy every day. And I think we just need to continue to show our opposition to the death penalty wherever it is, respect Indonesians' law, but say they've got it wrong on the punishment they want to meter out.
Tanya Plibersek today said that it would have been far better for them to have been arrested by Australian Federal Police here rather than the Indonesian authorities being effectively tipped off. Paul Fletcher, do the Australian Federal Police have anything to answer for, or at least the policy that they have in place of assisting foreign agencies where the death penalty may apply?
Look, unfortunately we don't have the luxury of going back and saying, can history take a different path? We're in the position where these men were arrested, charged, convicted in Indonesia, and a penalty was imposed under Indonesian law. It is a penalty, the death penalty, which is at odds with Australia's law and the view of the majority of Australians, and it's that view that the Australian government, from the Prime Minister down, and Foreign Minister Julie Bishop, has been putting very strongly to the Indonesian government at all levels as we seek for clemency for these two men.
Anna Burke, what's your view on culpability or otherwise of Australian Federal Police?
Oh, look, I agree with Tanya's stance that the AFP should have handled this differently, but as Paul said, hindsight's a wonderful thing. We actually have a situation under our law where we actually don't extradite people if they're going to face the death penalty in other countries. I think there were better ways of dealing with this, given that some of the family members of the 9 were the one who tipped off the AFP at the beginning. I think this is a tragedy that could have been avoided. These young men should have been arrested when they returned to Australia, and the situation would be totally different. Having said that, the situation is as it is, and we need to keep going down the route of seeking the pardon of these young men's lives.
Malcolm Turnbull had some pretty strong words to say on this topic on Q&A last night. He also said, in relation to the government's problems, that the government should not slogan at people. He said that there was a problem with the distribution of budget cuts, which is seen as a swipe at the fairness of the budget. Also said a good leader would set out a vision for Australia. Paul Fletcher, any of that aimed at Tony Abbott personally?
Oh, well, I think you'd have to ask Malcolm that. I thought Malcolm gave a strong performance, as he always does, but full disclosure, I'm Malcolm's parliamentary secretary, so naturally I think what he does, he always does a good job, but he did do a good job, as he always does.
He also went into bat for Philip Ruddock. What's your view, Paul, on Philip Ruddock losing his job as the Chief Government Whip?
Well, look, this is a matter for the Prime Minister. It's entirely within his power to choose his team. That's the way the system works in the Liberal Party. We choose a leader and then the leader makes the other choices. Can I just say Philip is enormously well respected. Philip is a friend of mine. He's been a terrific mentor to me in the time that I've been in the Parliament. My seat adjoins his, and so we are often at community functions together, and Philip has been very helpful to me. I admire him enormously, and he's very widely admired in the party room and by Liberals all around the country.
Anna Burke, just 30 seconds left. Two things come to mind when I see Labor attacking Malcolm Turnbull. One, that you see it perhaps as an inevitability that he will become leader, and two, that you're worried about it.
Oh, look, you know, the Prime Minister said the other day that good government starts today. Let's see it in action from the Prime Minister down, from all the ministers. Let's not get into the personalities of it, but I think Malcolm's performance last night was to the backbench for the next tilt at a leadership challenge. And for us, it doesn't matter who the leader is, it's the bad policies that this government's prosecuting.
Anna Burke, Paul Fletcher, great to have your company here on Lunchtime Agenda.
Thank you.